Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Kent on this fine February morning, this fine Groundhog Day. We're glad that you chose to be here with us, whether you've been coming for a long time or whether this is your very first morning. Welcome, welcome. We're so glad you're here. And to our beloveds who are joining us on Zoom in our virtual sanctuary, we want to welcome you and say hello. So that camera over there on the wall by the piano is where they can see you waving. So hello and welcome, welcome. Have lots of announcements this morning, so I will try to make them interesting and brief. My name is Christina Church, and I have the privilege of serving you as your minister. And so let me share with you some things that are happening in our community. First off, if you're new here, we would love to ask if you would like to fill out one of these visitor cards that you'll find in the pews. These little green cards will help us keep in touch with you and let you know about all these wonderful things that are happening in our community and get to know you better too. We also have yellow cards that if you're carrying something, a big joy or a big sorrow today that you just would like to share with the community, you can fill out one of these and give it to an usher or bring it up to the pulpit, and we'll announce those later. We have so many things going on here at this lively and busy congregation. One of the things that's happening next week is we have this really exciting Discovering Your Gifts workshop that is a place to both grow in community and to learn more about yourself. This is going to be on Saturday, February 8th from 3 to 6 p.m. in Hobbs Hall. It's going to be wonderful, and we would love for you to register for it so we know how much food and we know how much childcare and we know all the things, who's planning on coming and how we need to provide hospitality for that. So don't miss that. It's going to be great. We also have today, we have stock sales for the UUYJ, Unitarian Universalist Youth for Justice, trip to Pipestem, West Virginia in June. So this is a trip to immerse ourselves in cultural aspects of folks who are struggling in Appalachia and to learn about the structural inequities that feed that system. So you can help by buying stocks. They are $20 per share. And we hope you'll buy multiple shares because faith formation is worth every penny, right? So please be generous with that and help our youth get to their service trip. We also have a community dinner tonight, our community dinner in Hobbs Hall at 5 o'clock. Everyone is welcome. We break bread with folks inside our community as well as folks who are a part of our extended community. And it is free to everyone, and the youth puts it on, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful experience. So we hope you'll join us for that as well. And lastly, as we head into this more contemplative space of worship, I want you to know that now that we're in a new month of February, we have a new worship theme, a new spiritual theme that we're considering, and we hit this one. Boy, the timing of this, you know, they do these way in advance, but our theme for the month is inclusion. So very important, part of our faith. And we are going to continue to talk about inclusion here at UUCK. And we're going to continue to lift up how we are called to honor diversity, create equity, and celebrate and amplify inclusion. It is Black History Month, and we are excited to celebrate that as well and present a service that honors one of our beloved ancestors, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. So, welcome, welcome. Sit back and let's move into the space of worship together. Our call to worship this morning is words from Praise Song for the Morning by Elizabeth Alexander, written for the occasion of Barack Obama's inauguration. Each day we go about our business, walking past each other, catching each other's eyes or not, about to speak or speaking. All about us is noise. All about us is noise and bramble, thorn and din, each one of our ancestors on our tongues. Someone is stitching up a hem, darning a hole in a uniform, patching a tire, repairing the things in need of repair. Someone is trying to make music somewhere, with a pair of wooden spoons on an oil drum, or with cello, boombox, harmonica, voice. A woman and her son wait for the bus. A farmer considers the changing sky. A teacher says, "Take out your pencils, begin." We encounter each other in words spiny or smooth, whispered or declaimed, words to consider, reconsider. We cross dirt roads and highways that mark the will of stone of someone and then others who said, I need to see what's on the other side. I know there's something better down the road. We need to find a place where we are safe. We walk into that which we cannot see. Say it plain that many have died for this day. Sing the names of the dead who brought us here, who laid the train tracks, raised the bridges, picked the cotton and the lettuce, built brick by brick the glittering edifices they would then keep clean and work inside of. Praise song for their struggle, praise song for the day, praise song for every hand-lettered sign, the figuring it out at kitchen tables. Some live by love thy neighbor as thyself. Others by first do no harm or take no more than you need. What if the mightiest word is love? In the wide and generous spirit of that love, let us worship together this morning. Each week we light our chalice, the symbol of our faith. This morning we have words from Pat Uribe Lichty, entitled Different But United. And I will read the first part. Our worship associate, Heidi Sumser, will read the second part. And I'd like to invite you all to read the third part with Heidi. It's on the screen, so I'll tell you when it's your turn, okay? Different yet united. We come from many places along different paths, bringing different truths. And yet, we come together as one people, with faith that we can use our differences to heal ourselves and each other, to bring wholeness into a fractured world.
We come seeking to find community, to find acceptance of who we are. In this place, we may find others who are much like us and others who are much different.
Now it's your turn.
May our lit chalice remind us that we are a people taught by different stories, with many voices, but always one people working for a world where love creates justice and justice gives birth to peace.
May it be so. And won't you rise and body your spirit and join us in singing our opening hymn, number 1026, If Every Woman in the World, and the words will be on your screen.
In the world raised its children in a culture of peace. If all our kids ignored the borders and reached for friendship across the waters, refusing to be enemies, there would be no more war.
Last Sunday, I shared with you a poem written by our children that was inspired by a young poet by the name of Amanda Gorman, who was inspired by a young poet by the name of Maya Angelou, who was inspired by a young poet by the name of Gwendolyn Brooks, who was inspired by a young poet by the name of Frances Harper. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, to be complete. When you look at it that way, right? So Harper passed in 1911, and you're going to hear a lot of her story and her poetry a little bit later in the service. So I thought I would just kind of put a thread through to the future on what she inspired. When Harper passed in 1911, after working her entire life for justice and writing absolutely beautiful and inspirational words that changed people's lives, that bent the arc towards justice, a young Gwendolyn Brooks read her writings and wrote a speech to the young during her time that said, "Say to them, say to the down keepers, the sun slappers, the self-soilers, the harmony hushers, even if you are not ready for day, it cannot always be night. You will be right, for that is the hard home run. Live not for battles won, live not for the end of the song, live in the all along." And when young Maya Angelou read those words, it stirred in her beautiful poetry and words. And she wrote, "And I know why the caged bird sings, but a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and in his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings for freedom." And when young Amanda Gorman read "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings," she was inspired to write, to change, to put her hand on the arc of justice, to bend the arc. And in 1998, when she was born, she grew up with a single mother. She grew up fighting for justice and became a poet herself. And in 2021, she stood on the steps of the Capitol, the first ever youth poet laureate. And while I don't have the time to read her entire collection of works and the entirety, I have some excerpts to share with you of the poem, "The Hill We Climb." This is the poem that inspired our children into justice work. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast, and we've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just ice. And yet the dawn is ours. Before we knew it, somehow we do it. Somehow we weather and witness a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean that we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. We seek harm to none, and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew. Even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we were tired, we tried. That we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never know again defeat, but because we will never sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare.
Each week, we devote time and space during our worship service to acknowledging and lifting up and honoring the joys and the sorrows that exist in the community. Let us take a brief moment of silence to center ourselves and to honor what we're bringing into the service today. Although we have no shared cards of sorrow this morning, I would like to introduce a ritual of a candle for sorrow and solidarity as we acknowledge and lament all of those whose lives, whose livelihoods, whose safety, health, and well-being have been endangered this week by the actions of those who occupy the seat of power. At this time, as we light that candle, I invite you to speak into this space or type into the space if you are on Zoom the names of those loved ones who are at risk or experiencing harm. I would like to lift up my friends Dan and Yvonne. For all those we have named and all of those whose names we will never know, we honor them. We sorrow for them. May people of conscience everywhere join together and find a way to end this suffering and tend to this pain. Now I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer. And this is a poem that is a prayer by Maya Angelou. Father, Mother, God, thank you for your presence during the hard and mean days, for then we have you to lean upon. Thank you for your presence during the bright and sunny days, for then we can share that which we have with those who have less. And thank you for your presence during holy days, for then we are able to celebrate you and our families and our friends. And for those who have no voice, we ask you to speak. For those who feel unworthy, we ask you to pour your love out in waterfalls of tenderness. For those who live in pain, we ask you to bathe them in the river of your healing. For those who are lonely, we ask you to keep them company. For those who are depressed, we ask you to shower upon them the light of hope. Dear Creator, you, the borderless sea of substance, we ask you to give to all the world that which we need most: peace. Amen. May it be so. And as always, we end with the community's joys, wonder, and awe. In the earlier service, Mary shared that Mary has an audition for a musical on Tuesday, so hold Mary in your heart for success on Tuesday and a great audition. Kurt shared earlier in the service as well his thanks to the volunteers and all the eaters too at the pancake breakfast last week who made it such a wonderful event. And thank you, Kurt. We are overjoyed to see the gifts of your commitment and your love. And finally, Kara shares a joy also that her daughter Julia graduated college and is thriving in her job with Jobs for Ohio graduates. Hooray! We celebrate with you, Kara. And for all these joys and sorrows, we honor you, we witness you, and we are here to travel this road with you, to accompany you on life's ups and downs.
Till our world so sad and weary finds the balmy rest of peace. Peace to silence her discord. Peace till war and crime shall cease. Peace to fall like gentle showers, or on parched flowers dew. Till our hearts proclaim with gladness, oh, he maketh all things
We are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity, and society cannot trample on the weakest and feeblest of its members without receiving the curse of its own soul. Now, please join in singing our reflection hymn, number 1015, I Know I Can.
As if you like. What a gift it has been to be at work on this monthly theme of inclusion during these first few days of February. It, for me, has been a beautiful antidote, a soul-healing balm. While so much ugliness and hate and blame and pure lies have been thrown around in the wake of, among other things, the tragic airplane and helicopter crash in our nation's capital on Wednesday. Working on the theme of inclusion, working to honor and celebrate Black History Month, a tradition that I am proud to work on and I'm proud to honor, proud and challenged to do that work. And we are all challenged as UUs to build a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive movement, more inclusive society, and a more inclusive and just world. And I believe this is also work that every American needs to commit themselves to. Now, it feels now not only important, but downright countercultural. But that is not going to stop us today from taking this month to consider how we're called to live love through the practice of inclusion. Oh no, it is not going to deter us. So, this morning we celebrate Black History Month, we lift up Black women poets today throughout our service for a very good reason. And I want to turn to celebrated poet Nikki Giovanni, whom we recently lost, because Nikki has articulated in her poem, Black History Month, exactly why this matters so much.
If Black History Month is not viable, then wind does not carry the seeds and drop them on fertile ground. Rain does not dampen the land and encourage the seeds to root. Sun does not warm the earth and kiss the seedlings and tell them plain, you are as good as anybody else. You've got a place here too.
If the wind doesn't carry those seeds from Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, those seeds going further back from Phyllis Wheatley, who inspired her, if those seeds are not carried to a Gwendolyn Brooks, if those seedlings don't bloom and inspire a Maya Angelou, and on and on and on, then we don't get seedlings in the next generation. We don't get people who have that message that you're as good as anybody else and there is a place here for you. So that's why this matters, and that's why today I am delighted and excited to introduce you or further acquaint you with one of our Unitarian spiritual ancestors, the writer, speaker, poet, teacher, activist, and just all-around superhero, Ohioan as well, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, a woman of courage and empathy and a wild, insatiable curiosity and passion for learning, who wrote many songs to inspire the people. And here is Songs for the People, one of her poems.
Let me make songs for the people, songs for the old and young, songs to stir like a battle cry whenever they are sung. Not for the clashing of sabers, for carnage nor for strife, but songs to thrill the hearts of men with more abundant life. Let me make the songs for the weary amid life's fever and fret, till hearts shall relax their tension and careworn brows forget. Let me sing for little children before their footsteps stray, sweet anthems of love and duty to float over life's highway. I would sing for the poor and aged when shadows dim their sight of the bright and restful mansions where there shall be no night. Our world, so worn and weary, needs music pure and strong to hush the jangle and discords of sorrow, pain, and wrong. Music to soothe all its sorrow, till war and crime shall cease, and the hearts of men grow tender, girdle the world with peace.
Frances was courageous. She spent her whole life speaking truth to power. She, of course, lived during tumultuous, difficult times, maybe the most difficult times our country has ever known, the era of the Civil War. And though she was born a free Black person in Baltimore, still she lost both of her parents by the age of 3. She had to begin working as a domestic servant at the age of 14 to help her aunt and uncle, who had taken her in as their own child, make ends meet. Later in her life, she became a single mother after her husband, Fenton Harper, died very soon after they married, and she was left with a young daughter and had to support herself and her family, which she did through speaking and writing and teaching gigs. She was brilliant, and she had an amazing way of expressing herself, and she was able to become a best-selling writer, a sought-after speaker, and a teacher who had many gifts to share. She spoke and she wrote tirelessly for a dizzying number of social causes. And so what I'm going to share today is just the briefest of dips into her life, because she did so much. It was like she lived 5 lives. But I just want to share a little bit about her. Frances, as I said, was not afraid to say what needed to be said. Her life is full of those inspirational moments where she uttered hard truths or took action that reflected her bedrock belief in equity, equality. In Philadelphia once, she refused to leave the city streetcar when the conductor told her that due to the color of her skin, she was not allowed to stay on board. And this was over 100 years before Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycotts. She called out hypocritical ministers, too, those who used passages in the Bible to defend the institution of slavery. She called out black men who expected her to support them in getting the vote, but would not offer her and her gender the same kind of support in return. She was sassy. And she saved some of her most cutting words for the white suffragettes who disincluded black women in their movement for the vote, strategically, because they said it would just be too hard and that black women would have to wait their turn. She stood on the dais with Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, and she minced no words about the romanticization of the delicate moral sensibilities of white women, who, it was said, would bring that delicate sense to the ballot box to cure all the country's ills. We know it didn't exactly turn out that way, right? Francis said that if there were any class of people that needed to be lifted out of their airy nothings and their selfishness, it was the white women of America. Like I said, she was sassy. And she received thunderous applause for these remarks. She was all about calling out hypocrisy. You can listen to some of the lines from her poem, Double Standard, which Heidi will read for us. This is a brief selection from the longer poem. It's about a woman who is being chastised for sexual immorality, while the man who seduced her goes scot-free. Her lines could apply to some powerful men of our time, I think. I'll let you imagine which ones I have in mind.
Crime has no sex, and yet today I bear the brand of shame, whilst he amidst the gay and proud still bears an honored name. Can you blame me if I learn to think your hate of vice a sham, when you so coldly crushed me down and then accused the man? Yet blame me for my downward course, but oh, remember well, within your homes you pressed the hand that led me down to hell. That I who fell and he who sinned shall reap as we have sown, that each the burden of his loss must bear and bear alone. No golden light can weigh the scale of justice in his sight, and what is wrong in women's life, in men's cannot be right.
Frances was also incredibly empathetic. She was intellectually gifted in so many ways. She had an incredible education that she was able to attain through her uncle, who was a minister and also an educator. And she had the ability to speak and write with ease and style and aplomb. In her lifetime, some compared her gifts as an orator to that of Frederick Douglass, and some found Frances to be the better speaker. With lines like, "We are all bound up together," she describes the interdependence of moral transgression, of the moral sin of slavery, and the way it touches every person who is part of the country and of the system, not just the enslavers and the enslaved people. This arresting use of language prefigured Dr. King's image of the single garment of destiny that we are all bound up in, but use the image of chains binding all Americans together in the iniquity of national sin. She could certainly be fiery, prophetic. She could say what needed to be said. But when I read much of her poetry, I come away with a sense of a person who had incredible resources of empathy and imagination. She had the ability to put herself in someone else's shoes. After all, she was born a free person, but she wrote a number of poems from points of view of characters who were enslaved. And these imaginative works of empathy helped people outside that horrific system of slavery to perceive the terrible pain and suffering caused by an immoral, evil system of enslavement. Her poetry depicted mothers torn away from their children and the human drama and heartbreak of the auction block, where human beings were being bought and sold. She held up a lens to this horror that was incredibly specific and descriptive, humanizing the enslaved people in skillful ways that insisted on what today we might call their worthiness and dignity.
The sale began, young girls were there, defenseless in their wretchedness, whose stifled sobs of deep despair revealed their anguish and distress. And mothers stood with streaming eyes and saw their dearest children sold. Unheeded rose their bitter cries, while tyrants bartered them for gold. And woman with her love and truth, for these in sable forms may dwell, gazed on the husband of her youth, with anguish none may point or tell. And men whose sole crime was their hue, the impress of their Maker's hand, and frail and shrinking children too, were gathered in that mournful band. Ye who have laid your love to rest and wept above their lifeless clay, know not the anguish of that breast whose loved ones are rudely torn away. Ye may not know how desolate our bosoms rudely forced to part, and how a dull and heavy weight will press the life drops from the heart.
So here she compares the grief of people who are mourning their loss of their loved ones, but are able to bury them, right, and have a ceremony and mourn them. Comparing that to someone whose loved one is ripped away from them, and then they never know what happened to that person ever again. They never in their lifetime get to hear what happened or have any sense of closure or know the end of the story. Frances was very curious. She was schooled at the Academy for Negro Youth, an excellent school, as I said, run by her uncle, the Reverend William Watkins. She never stopped reading, she never stopped exploring. All of her long life, she never stopped asking questions about why things had to be the way they were. And she never stopped her writing, speaking, and teaching about how to change them for the better. Her faith all through her life was an important guiding star. Even as she roamed intellectually and spiritually, she searched for the place where her ideas about the world would meet the spiritual nourishment that she was seeking. She had been raised in the African Methodist Episcopal tradition of her family, free Black Americans living in the Baltimore area. But as an adult, she became deeply influenced by the progressive Christian theology and liberal culture of American Unitarians, many of whom were active or at least adjacent to abolitionist and then women's suffrage movements. Through her social justice work for these causes and many others, she became an active participant in the Unitarian Church during her years in Philadelphia. And she was memorialized in the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia upon her death in 1911. She was a border crosser in so many areas of life, and she transcended religious categories. I think she's like many of us in the modern-day Unitarian Universalist movement. Some of us were raised in one tradition or denomination, but we find spiritual nourishment in another faith or another expression of that faith or philosophy. or conception of the divine. And we together bring all that pluralism, all that richness and diversity with us when we come to Unitarian Universalism. Like many of us, Frances was drawn to Unitarianism for its liberal theology and its openness, but she never entirely abandoned her faith of origin either, the AME tradition. Her uncle had given her his last name, a great education, his driving vision of justice, and this AME church community, a place that would always welcome her back. The Christian faith remained central to Frances's life throughout her 85 years. And I'm sorry to say, my friends, that despite all her incredible accomplishments, that her legacy was largely forgotten by Unitarians after her death. Like so many women and people of color, her legacy wasn't always known or appreciated or fully honored by those who came after. But in 1987, her legacy began to be rehabilitated when she was inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. Then in 1992, a group of Black UUs gathered at her overgrown grave in Collingwood, Pennsylvania. This was the oldest publicly owned Black cemetery in the United States, where she was buried. Slowly, interest in Frances's life and writings began to revive then, so that by 2011, the 100th anniversary of her death, UUs had organized a conference in her honor in Philadelphia. And on that same centennial of her death, she was finally inducted into the Ohio Women's Hall of Fame. Now, I wonder what Frances would make of all of this. Would she be disappointed or surprised at the way she's been forgotten or the way her grave had been allowed to go to the dandelions? Well, let's listen to her poem, Dandelions.
Welcome, children of the spring, in your garbs of green and gold, lifting up your sun-crowned heads on the verdant plain and woad. As a bright and joyous troop from the breast of earth you came. Fair and lovely are your cheeks, with sun kisses all aflame. In dusty streets and lanes where lowly children play, there is gentle frenzy smile, making brighter life's highway. Dewdrops and the morning sun weave your garments fair and bright, and we welcome you today as children of the light. Children of the earth and sun, we are slow to understand all the richness of the gifts flowing from our Father's hand.
We are sometimes slow to understand all the richness of the gifts we receive from our Father's hand. We've certainly been slow to appreciate and celebrate the gifts that this incredible woman brought to our country and our world. We've been slow to see and acknowledge how her writings and ideas and activism prepared the way for many other feminists and poets and thinkers and artists who came after, including Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Nikki Giovanni, Bell Hooks, Amanda Gorman. We've been slow to claim her affectionately and respectfully and with gratitude as one of our spiritual ancestors, a beloved member of the great cloud of witnesses that travels alongside us as we try to understand what is ours to do today. As we continue to get to know Frances, may her life and legacy speak to us in these troubled times of hope, of inclusion, of the very highest and best aspirations of our living tradition. May we take comfort in her words and hear the challenge behind them, too.
There is a light beyond the darkness, joy beyond the present pain, and the shadows bear a promise of a brighter coming day. Hush, do you hear? Frances, our spiritual advisor, is calling our name, lending us her courage and empathy and boundless curiosity. She is challenging us to remember that in this life we are all bound up together. What happens to one of us affects all of us. May we hear her voice insisting on justice and equity for all people, all human beings, born worthy and possessed of inherent dignity. May we hear her hopeful words telling us that a better day is coming, and may we have the strength to make it so.
And I invite now a time of generosity where we can also find the strength to make it so, where we share our resources, we share what we have with this community and other organizations outside our borders doing important work. Our recipient for the month of February is the UU Disaster Relief Fund, which is working now to provide relief to victims of the LA wildfires, as well as congregations that have been just damaged and affected by the wildfires. So we ask your generosity for that important cause too.
This piece is from a beautiful musical, a new musical by Shaina Taub called Suffs, and it's about the journeys and movements of suffragettes in our country, and it includes some of that tension of how sometimes the works aren't always in the favor of all, but like how that affects us, and about this through-thread connection of our past and our future.
You won't live to see the future that you fight for. Maybe no one gets to reach that perfect day. If the work is never over, then how do you keep marching anyway? Do you carry your banner as far as you can, rewriting the world with your imperfect plan, till the next stubborn girl picks it up in a picket line over and over again, and you join in the chorus of centuries chanting to her? The path will be twisted and rocky and slow, but keep marching, keep marching. Will you fail or prevail? Well, you may never know, but keep marching, 'cause your ancestors are all the proof you need that progress is possible, not guaranteed. It will only be made if we keep marching on. 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 And remember every mother that you came from. Learn as much from our success as our mistakes. Don't forget you're merely one of many others on the journey every generation makes. We did not end in justice, and neither will you. Neither will you. We made strides, so we know you can too. Oh, you can. Make peace with our incomplete power and use it for good, 'cause there's so much to do. The gains will feel small and the losses too large. Keep marching, keep marching. You'll rarely agree with whoever's in charge. Keep marching, 'cause your ancestors are all the proof you need that progress is possible, not guaranteed. It will only be made if we keep marching on. Keep marching on. Yes, the world can be changed. We've done it before, so keep marching. Keep marching. We're always behind you, so bang down the door and keep marching. future demands that we fight for it now. It will only be ours if we keep marching on. Come on, keep marching, marching, marching. 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 Keep marching on.
And now, please join us in the extinguishing of our chalice. Heidi?
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please join in singing our closing hymn, number 1040, Hush.
Please rise and bow to your spirit. Let's sing.
Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do?
Hush, somebody's calling your name. Can you hear it? Calling you to a past not quite forgotten, calling us to a future not fully imagined. Hush, hush. Somebody, maybe it's Francis, is calling our name. What shall we do? Thank you, and may you go in peace.